My name is Darren Weber, and you're listening to Studio Sessions. Today, we're on the phone with the vocalist of Metalcore Massachusetts band Degrader. We're going to be talking about 2 songs off of their EP From the Inside Out, as well as new music, new tours, the experience of getting signed to Stay Sick Records, and mental health. Stay tuned.
Yo, what's up? This is Liam from Degrader, and you're listening to WKTV 1035.
So the first song, Gaia, I think this song is self-explanatory in its meaning, but it is always better to get the band's personal take on the meaning of their songs. In your own words, what is Gaia about?
Well, when we originally put out Gaia, it was the first single that we put out after a couple member changes, and everything that we had written up to that point had kind of just been like an angry FU type of vibe with not a lot of substance to it. So when we went to do that record, we decided let's start saying something that has a little more context to it, something that people can get behind. And I mean, if you just take a look around the world, you can see that pollution is at an all-time high, and our planet is just, literally dying. And that's something that everybody can identify with. Like, it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Like, this applies to everyone. So, almost kind of like a blanket statement that we can make that if we're not, taking our own actions seriously, then we're going to be paying repercussions very soon. And it's kind of up to us and up to the individual to, spark that inspiration to get people behind a movement that, makes people more aware of how they're acting and what steps that they can take to minimize their carbon footprint and get back on the right track to having like a healthy, ecosystem, having a healthy earth and not like, basically just damning us all to hell by being ignorant and not giving a care towards things like that. So that was like the first thing that we felt, would be a good topic to cover in regards to putting more substance and context to our music rather than just being like, hey, I'm angry and I hate you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that people don't, that's what I'm trying to prove with this project exactly, is that, just because you're heavy and just because you're angry doesn't mean you have to be like F you. You can do something positive with that. I mean, you're yelling and you're raising your voice, so you might as well be yelling about something.
I think often when like vocalists get, or just members of bands, when they get interviewed about things like this, I think a lot of them want to, hash it up and be like, oh, well, it's really not angry. But even though, I would make the argument that it is angry, but these are the things that are worth being angry about. And it's important to have these kind of things exist, like this type of, even though in a sense it is negative energy, it's important to have it available because there's nowhere else that you can healthily get that out of your system, and there's no other place where it's okay or no other time where it's okay for you to be angry and to yell about these things. And so, maybe on the surface it might look like, oh, we're just yelling, we're just angry, but it's what are we angry about? What are we yelling about? What's being addressed here that people aren't looking at? What's the bigger picture going on here? Why are we angry? Why are we yelling? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. How do you believe that this song is a positive song?
I think it's positive because, like I'm saying, just heavy music in general, it gets people's attention in a sense, and people that want to dive deeper into the meanings, it's usually there. Like there's always like that face value that, I show someone one of our songs for the first time. They're not looking for the underlying meaning. They're kind of just, seeing it, feeling it for the first time. And that, initial reaction is going to be one of like rage, of outrage, one that's going to get people going and get people motivated, get them to get something out of them. And then after that subsides, then you have the context to look behind, and there's always a message within any artist's music. And with heavy music, you're able to explore, some hot topics and some no zones that other genres of music don't really tap into all that often. Like, I mean, we have a song called Gaslighter, and that touches on, domestic violence and gaslighting people. And, and abuse and things like that. And you're not going to hear a rap artist, a pop artist, a country artist talk about things like that because, I mean, to be quite blunt, no one wants to have to talk about that. So that's why I take it upon myself to force out that conversation, to force it into my lyrics, to force people to wake up to these things because they are a reality, even though we want to ignore it. And people are mostly interested in listening to music that's about, getting wasted and partying and stuff. That doesn't make these issues invisible to the world. And it's important for someone to be the person to start the conversation. And I think that's probably the most positive thing that you can get out of metal is it really does start that dialogue. It forces us to talk about these hard issues to discuss, racism, abuse, the planet. I could go on. There's a ton of different things that just like sometimes just go overlooked or we don't think about them unless it's thrown right in front of your face. And what a better way to get it in someone's face than, literally screaming at the top of your lungs, like, yo, wake up. This is here and it's a real thing and we need to talk about it.
Dude, absolutely. I completely agree. And you mentioned Gaslighter. That was another song, not for this project, but just one that I wanted to talk about because when I first heard that song, I was like, this is interesting. I was thinking kind of like, because I've taken theater classes, so I was thinking of like ghostlighting and stuff like that. So then I looked into gaslighting and I was like, oh, wow, like this is something, like you said, this is something that doesn't get talked about unless, you're studying psychology or you've been in it. Like it's I got to give you major credit for actually like bringing that about because now not only have you raised the conversation about it, but you've like educated people like, hey, this is a thing. This is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And then that, makes people realize in a sense like, oh, maybe this has been happening to me, or maybe this has been happening to someone I know that's in a similar situation. And now that I know about this, I might be able to be at a more advantageous point to help them out or to make a change or to make a difference on that subject. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So the second song we're talking about is Phantom Pain. And that's another song that's really heavy, but not just in sound and lyrics as well. What is Phantom Pain about?
So Phantom Pain is probably one of the most personal songs I've ever written. My grandfather passed away a couple of years ago, and I wrote Phantom Pain just a few short months after that went down. And my grandfather kind of replaced my father in my life. My father didn't really play a major role, so my grandfather, kind of filled that void. And when he passed away, it was just a challenge that I had never faced in my life and I wasn't prepared for. But kind of just I wanted to write in a way that would like honor the lessons that I had learned, even though, I might not be able to talk to him anymore, or I might not be able to ask for advice. There's still things that he left me with that I'll never forget, and I'll be able to carry that on with me throughout the rest of my life. And, the overall message of the song is when someone passes away, you never really do get over it. You never truly recover. You just adapt. But it's important to adapt, and it's important to not let, the challenge overcome you, and it's important to not succumb to the hard parts of the challenge because there's definitely days, even now, years since he's passed away where I wish I could give him a phone call or I wish I could tell him about, something that the band just got done. And I mean, obviously I can't, but what I can do is I can look back on the memories that we have. And I know that, if I were able to tell him about what's going on, he would be super proud of me. And so, yeah, the overall message is to just, keep your faith and to keep moving along because that's what, our loved ones who passed away, that's what they would want us to do. They don't want us to sit here and dwell over them forever. They probably want us to miss them, but not in a sense that's debilitating and prevents us from living our lives. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So that's a super hard thing for people to just talk about, never mind writing a song and recording it. What was that process like for you?
I feel that as an artist, I've always been the type of person to, kind of wear my heart on my sleeve. And I think it's important because not a lot of people do that. And it's important to be able to go out into this world, whether it's through our art or through communications or friendships or relationships. It's important that we have people that we can identify our struggles with theirs. Because everybody that we know, or don't know, everybody's going through something. And writing that one song in particular was like almost like an assignment to myself, where I was kind of like, I kind of came to this realization in the lowest of that challenge that I faced when my grandfather passed away. I came to this realization where I was like, I'm not the only one who has felt this way about this or about anything else. And I can't even imagine how awful it would have felt to go through that without the support of like my friends and family and people that could identify with my struggle and the challenge that I was facing. And I thought, there probably are people that are going through similar things and they feel like they have no one to turn to and no one to talk to. And that's where music comes in for me for a lot of things in my life where, I feel like there's no one else that's going to be able to relate to me. But then I hear this song and, whatever song it is, and it talks about the problem that I'm having, or whether it's directly or indirectly, because one of the beauties about music is I might write a song and it could mean a very specific thing to me, but the way I write it, anybody can listen to it and it can mean something completely different to them. And as long as I'm able to, connect to at least one person, and someone hears one of my songs and they feel something, whether they feel, they feel sad, they feel happy, I think it's important to get those emotions out and to connect with the fans between the artists. And I feel like, so many heavy bands, for sure, there's a reason, that there's the stigma against heavy metal, because there's a ton of artists that all they write about is just brutal things, topics that I'm really not interested in at all, violence and death and suicide, and, well, suicide in a different sense, not like an intellectual sense, but just like, like general topics that like what make people talk about heavy music the way they do.
Yeah.
And I just kind of felt like there's enough of that already, and I don't want to be that type of artist. I want to be someone that people can relate to, and I want people to like feel something from my music, whether it's good or bad. I want people to like hear my music and listen to my lyrics and be like, wow, he's really like saying something here, and this was not a waste of my time.
Well, as a fan of the band and as a listener of the music, I can say from, one fan to, to another of music, but especially yours, is that you're achieving your goal. I promise you, like that was why I wanted to include you guys in this project, is because I knew you just listen to your music and like these guys aren't just looking to write the next heavy breakdown. They're not looking to write the next, good riff. These guys are trying to say something and they should be heard.
Exactly. Cool. Thank you, man.
Absolutely. Nope. Thank you. Thank you for the music, dude. And you have more coming along the way. You just released a song today. What is Fang about?
Fang is about a couple of similar topics to Gaslighter, written in mind with my relationship that I had with my father growing up, where he wasn't very active, wasn't very present. But also, this song was written a little more broadly, and it's more just about toxic relationships in general, and how it's important to be able to recognize who's really down for you and who isn't, and who's going to have your back in the tough times. And when we've been playing this song live on our last couple tours, it was the first time we incorporated it into the set. And every night before we would play it, I would give a little speech. There comes a time in life where you're going to have to recognize, who in your circle is real and who's a snake. And when things get tough, or when you need help and you're in a bad situation, who's going to be there to ride for you and to get you through that situation, and who's not going to be bothered. And that one, like, there's just like kind of call out lines essentially where it's about knowing your own worth and knowing, I know that you claim to be my friend, but I know that you're like not down for me like you should be. And all I really need and all I really have time for are people that are really going to, hold me down when I need them.
Damn. I didn't I took that away, but that is awesome just to hear your interpretation. And now like it all makes even more sense than it already did.
And in another sense, like the lyrics are broad enough. Like I said earlier, another person could listen to that. Like, to me, that song is about my father, but another person could listen to that song and it could be about their ex-best friend or someone they used to date or really just anybody that you might be angry at. You know what I mean? It's important to get those negative emotions out and to call out the people in your life and to cut them out when you see fit.
And that's the beauty of this music, is the fact that it's so open to interpretation. The fact that you can take it as, heavy and therefore negative, or as something that seems to be trying to get a message across through the aggression.
Exactly. Almost in like a sense of empowerment. Some people are empowered through their aggression, just like some people are empowered through being passive. And I think, this is just kind of a gateway for people to be aggressive in a tolerable sense that's not like dangerous or harming anybody else. Because, like, imagine like an ordinary day you're driving and like somebody cuts you off when you're driving on the highway, and like you can't really go. You can, but you shouldn't like just get out of your car and like go fight that guy. So people just throw on like a heavy tune and they get it out that way, and keeps us a little sane in the end, I guess.
Well, that's the thing about, like, you go to a show and you see people, essentially beating the shit out of each other, but it's cathartic. There's no malintent with it. Everybody's just trying to get out the frustrations of the day in a more healthy and safe environment.
Because there's nowhere else you can do that. You know what I mean? You can't go into your office and start, whopping on them. But that's why we have these shows, and people come out to them for the first time and they don't know what to expect, and they leave, changed if it goes over well and they don't get, hurt.
I remember my first Degrader show, and we talked about it on Twitter a little bit. It was last year on the Insolent Tour with Bloodline. You guys came to Scranton, and it was the same thing for me. I've been to shows before, and I was with my friend who's actually now my girlfriend, because she made it through that experience. So I was like, okay, well, we got to get together then. But
right.
So yeah, she didn't know what to expect, but I kind of did. But even when you guys got on stage, I still didn't know what to expect, and I was blown away. Number one, there was that incident where you almost got tackled into Jay's drums, and they broke a PA.
Yes, man, that show was absolutely wild. Scranton and Pennsylvania in general has always been an area that's been good to us, always made us feel nice and at home. And I think the best type of shows are like, lately we've been playing on like stages and playing like bigger cap rooms, and sometimes I really just miss like the more intimate like floor shows, where you're like right with the crowd and you're not like on this big stage like you're some type of like god. You're just kind of like another human, and those instances where like it just gets so crazy and everyone is truly feeling the vibe that like even like we get sucked into it a bit, and like there's no barrier between us and the crowd, and sometimes we bump into each other, shit goes down, it gets crazy. Like that's truly what it's all about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that I'll never forget, because that was supposed to be at one venue, and then it got changed to another, which was this kind of like hole in the wall pub, but you guys still gave it your all. I mean, it was a very intimate space, and I'll never ever forget Saint, because you guys are only like a foot apart from each other, and he's still doing his bass spins like it's nobody's business.
Yes, man, there has been a lot of practice and a lot of spatial awareness training for that. And there was definitely a couple times when he first joined the band that I would get whopped by those. But now we've been on the same wave for so long that I just know what he's going to do when he's going to do it. And then by that point, when you saw us at that show, we were on that wave. And, it's almost kind of like, it's like an athlete just like zoning in an overtime situation where they're like, I need to score right now to like carry the team. That's the kind of mindset that we go into when we're getting ready to play a show. It's just like, all right, we need to sorry, I'm not trying to swear.
No,
we need to we need to put like everyone on our back and just take them through this crazy ride right now. Like there's no other option. We just have to go and get on board. We're taking you.
Absolutely. I want to go back real quick to just talking about new music. Burn You, Burn We comes out March 22nd. What can listeners and fans expect from this new music?
Well, you can definitely expect what you would expect from us, which is, there's some songs on the record that are just, Degrader, powerhouse songs that, you would anticipate us to put out, like nothing out of the norm, but that's not all there is. We took some big risks. We really mixed it up. There's definitely something for everybody, I think, on this. Definitely some newer songs that are just not that's the sense that they would blow you away because you've never heard anything like it before, but you have never heard anything like it from us before. And it's kind of our take on certain styles that you just wouldn't anticipate. You know, it's very different for us. We really broke out of our shell. And I think that we put ourselves in a position where we can really go in any direction from here on out, where we can either do heavier stuff if we want to, but there's also the option to go down like a lighter path. There's some songs that really I wouldn't even consider heavy songs on the record. I think we really showed off our versatility as artists. There's 10 full tracks. There's no intros, outros, interludes. It's just a full 10-song album. Not to say that there isn't fluidity throughout the release, because I think that there is for sure, but almost in the sense that like there's no like cop-out songs. There's no like quick 1-minute songs or anything that might be considered like a cheap way to, like, I know bands that put out like 8 songs and they call it a full length and like half of it is like interludes or something like that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
we just wanted to give people like their money's worth. You're getting 10 full songs. Every song sounds a little bit different. No song is, you know, covering the same exact style. And there's just a lot of different stuff there. There's definitely going to be something for anybody who likes any kind of heavy music.
So new music means new tours. Any idea on where you're going, who you're going with?
I can't say too much because everyone will get mad at me if I leak. But we do have a record release tour planned.
Okay.
That's unannounced. I can't say who we're taking, but we did pick a couple bands that it was just a no-brainer. You know, we got a lot of submissions and we had a lot of people to pick from. But at the end of the day, we kind of knew from the start, actually. You know, once there was a couple particular bands in mind, and once that kind of came to the table, we're like, oh, obviously it's going to be them. And I think when people see the flyer and people see the areas that we're hitting, it's all markets that, you know, we've been to multiple times. So, you know, no, we're not hitting any new cities on this one. We're just going to where we feel at home, and really not to be, you know, snobby, but this is our tour. You know, this is the first headliner that we've ever done. It's the first time that we've ever taken bands out. It's the first time that it's kind of been about us, and this is about us and our records. So we wanted to make sure that the cities and the routing were just like places that like I know the people that are going to be coming. Like I very much feel that like Degrader is the type of band where like we don't have fans so much as we just have friends everywhere. And like when I go to play, like when I see like the routing for like a tour, let's say there's Florida shows, I'm going to be like, oh, nice. I'm going to get to see Jesse, Olivia. I'm going to get to see Bloodbather, the Sorosa Boys. You know, if I see a Pennsylvania show, you know, it's like I'm going to get to see D. I'm going to get to see Garrett. Just basically, you know, I feel like we have such a good connection with our fan base that it doesn't even feel like a fan base. It feels more like a family base, like a home base. And I feel like, you know, the Massachusetts local scene and kind of like our level of metal has kind of died out, and it's kind of split into different areas. You know, some kids reside up in New Hampshire and some kids, you know, down in Rhode Island and Connecticut. And it's almost like we really don't have an official hometown as a result of that, but we benefit from that in the way that everywhere is our hometown, and people are kind of rooting for us right now, I think, and I think that's a cool feeling, and I'm just super excited to be announcing these things, and I know once people see this tour, they're going to be like, let's go.
So another thing, congrats on signing with Stay Sick Recordings. That just welcomes you up to a whole new, just opening new ways for your family to grow. What's that been like so far, being on a record label?
So honestly, I feel that it happened way faster than this normally happens. It almost happened in like a blink of an eye. We linked up with our managers over at Modern Empire, maybe back in the summer last year, right after we came off tour with Great American Ghost and Downswing. Started opening conversations there. Things kind of moved slow at first, and it was kind of like, hey, you know, are you guys working on new music? And we had some stuff. We had some demos. Our manager was like, listen, go write your record, and then when it's done, hit me up. And a couple months passed, and we got the record done. We finished writing it, and it was almost like within a couple days, I just got a call, and it was like, hey, Stay Sick. They checked out your record, and they want to make you guys a deal. And it was just a no-brainer for us right away. On paper, everything looked good. Stay Sick has an awesome lineup with some seriously awesome bands, some of them that had already been good friends of ours, so we knew that we were going to be in good hands, and they've just been taking very good care of us. Mike is the man. Shout out Mike Milford. Basically, just whatever we need to be in a better position, they're willing to work towards it. They were awesome about linking us up with Shane from the Brickhead House to do our record. Mike took care of all the design work and all the pre-order bundles. They've just been super cooperative, and they really make us feel like part of the team and not just another band on the roster. I really feel like there's like a greater sense of value among this label, where I feel like a lot of bands, they sign record deals and then they're kind of left to fend off for themselves. Whereas I feel that we've been working very closely with the label to really hit the mark with this record and make sure that, we're doing the best that we can and that this record hits as many ears as possible.
What have you taken away from being signed? Like, what did you guys realize about yourself? What were some of the lessons that you learned when you finally got to put that fresh ink down?
Cool, that's a good question. So something that happened, like something that started to happen after we got signed, is when we were on tour, like bands that would like open up the shows and stuff, like we would be asked pretty frequently, like, how did you guys get signed? And that's such a weird question to answer, because I don't feel that there was any one particular thing that we did that, like, there's some bands that they just put out a hit song, or they just do, like, they have a video that blows up, and labels want a piece of that. They're reaching out and they're grabbing and making offers left and right. And we weren't that type of band, which is okay, But I think once that deal, once I got the phone call and it was like, hey, Stay Sick Records wants to make a deal, it was at that moment that I felt that there wasn't a single person that could say a single thing that would ever make me believe that we're not one of the hardest working bands. We've never really had any handouts. We've always paid out of pocket to do whatever it is that we had to do. We booked our tours with a friend rather than having like a booking agent do it. We grinded out tours on our own. We paid for our own van repairs, paid for our own merch. We basically just have been paving our own way since day one with the original members all the way up to the transitions with the member changes. And once that deal kind of set itself in place, it kind of just like made me realize this can be as real and as massive as I want it to be, so long as I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get to the step that I'm trying to get to. There's not a doubt in my mind that in a couple of years, we're going to be doing some like big tours with some bigger bands and eventually be one of those bigger bands. It's all about, what you're willing to put into it. And that's what I tell people when they ask, how did you get signed? And it was like, we just kept being a band, and we made being a band a priority. It's all about creating good content and releasing it, in a smart, marketable way, not just, some people, they just make songs and they drop them and they see what happens, but it's all about the momentum that you can build between songs and your actions and your tours and what you decide to do. And it really kind of just like shifted us even more so into business mode, or rather we were kind of always in business mode, but now we're in like pro mode, and slowly but surely, like the way that we're handling things has been shifting into like a career mindset where, we're no longer just doing things to get the most numbers or to have like the hottest trending, but more so to stay on the same momentum wave where, we want to keep this consistent, and we want to be doing this for as long as possible. And eventually I'd really like it to pay my bills, which is a super, super difficult thing to do. Less so through the music, but I would be really interested in like taking this band to a position where my personal name is of like elevated status, so I can use that to maybe help younger bands, or to just basically make income through the industry, not necessarily through the band, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think you guys are on your way, man. I mean, being signed to Stay Sick Records just opened up a huge opportunity, because that is, you mentioned some valid points about do-it-yourself bands that not a lot of people realize. Stay Sick Records was kind of a do-it-yourself thing. Like Franz put that together. He just put himself out there and started a record label and said, okay, hopefully this works. And he built it from the ground up. You guys are building your band from the ground up. I mean, there's correlation there. You guys are going to take off one of these days. It's going to happen.
I think so, man. And I think another cool thing about that kind of DIY aspect of Stay Sick, especially moving into the future, is the tight relationship that there is, not just between, us and the people that own the label, but also between the bands. I know that there's a couple other bands are going to announce, deals with Stay Sick later this year, and I'm not going to reveal who, but it is something worth paying attention to. And essentially, I find that there's different levels and different waves of this industry and of our scene and our demographic. And take, for example, you have that whole wave. You had Varials, Left Behind, The Dahlia, Knock Loose. They were all kind of like a wave, a generation of metal. They were all helping each other, touring together, boosting each other up. And, you look at all those bands now, and they're all doing incredible things. And my band, we have our own network, and we have our own level. We have our friends, we have Downswing, we have Boundaries, Born Anew, Bloodline. I could go on and on. But basically just like our wave, and right now in 2019, it's our turn. Like, all of our bands are releasing full-length albums. Like, this is the year that, like, our level gets brought to the limelight. Because all these older bands, I mean, not to knock any of them, I used to listen to them a ton when I was younger, but, like, Of Mice and Men, Asking Alexandria, like, the bigger top-tier metalcore bands are on their way out and are, like, not really relevant. They're kind of just, like, being milked for what's left in them. But no one's really like, oh, I can't wait for their next release. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
It's said, it's done. They had an awesome run, and while the run's definitely not over, it's definitely not the focus of like the new generation. A lot of these younger kids are really, diving deep into the underground scene more so than they ever have in the past 10 years, and even furthermore. And I think that like a lot of these bands, kind of like how I was talking about how like all our fans are friends, I think that's what our whole wave is about. And I think that's what like our whole, it's almost like an army, in a sense, where like all these people, we're the people's bands. Everyone wants to see us succeed just because we're genuine people, and we try to do good by the fans and by our friends. And, it's all about sharing the experience. So when we go up and we play like a really big show, and it's a great example was the Downswing EP release show last year, where they played a show, and it was like one of the craziest shows that we had been a part of. And when they played their set, it was just like a victory for everyone involved. Like everyone that was watching, everyone that was playing, everyone that was in a band, everyone that had just been supporting that band. Once that show happened, like everyone was just on top of the world. And I think that's something that's unique to these newer waves of metal that Stay Sick has recognized and is trying to capitalize on, not in like a shady way, but just in a sense that's like a momentum that they can get behind. Like they see what we have been building up, and they just want to help us build it up so that it can be something like super legit and like unquestionably sick. No pun intended.
The ECT movement, I mean, that's a great example right there. You guys, like you said about Varials and Left Behind and all them, you guys are that next chapter with the entire ECT movement, which includes you guys, Born Anew, Downswing, Boundaries.
I mean, ECT is essentially, although like it started off with Downswing and then like kind of us four bands, it's really, I mean, in my opinion, it's about, anybody that wants to get in on the movement is ECT. Obviously, when it gets said, the first thing you think is Downswing, and then the next thing you think is, our bands. But the whole mindset is East Coast Trash is like this, it's a tidal wave. It's this movement. It's this culture, in a sense, these people growing together and, like I said, creating like an army, creating a movement, something that people can get behind, something that people can identify with. That's not just like, really like this band. It's like, no, I'm East Coast Trash and this is family. It's kind of something like that. That's very unique to metal. I think that, I mean, I've been listening to metal since I was like 13. That's when I really started diving into it. And there was never really anything like that up until our band started taking the forefront and started creating our own movement. There had never really been anything like that before, I don't think.
So you guys are bringing in everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. If you listen to us, if you're down with what you're saying, you're in.
Yep, that's the mentality that you got to keep forward, because who cares? You know what I mean? Like, none of us are famous. None of us are big. There's no difference between you and me, even. You know, we have our own passions, and if you support our passion, then we support yours, essentially. And that's why I, like, instead of, you know, there's so many bands that go out, they have, like, a merch guy, and he's just sitting at the table all night, and you never really get to meet the band. Not that we don't have a merch guy, because we do have one, but I firmly believe so strongly in just, like, connecting with the people that are listening to your music and appreciating them for the opportunity that they're giving me, because I mean, it's cliche to say, but it's true. Like, without the people that, you know, push the band and motivate the band, there'd be no point to any of this. And ECT and East Coast Trash and Degrader and any of our bands, like, can't be a thing unless people identify with that and want it to be a thing. And we kind of created it, or not necessarily we as in Degrader, but just in general, like, East Coast Trash was created in the sense that, like, we do have a family going on, so let's, like, call it something and let's make it something. Because, I mean, it's a culture, and it's a world, essentially, and it's the world that I grew up in. And I feel like a lot of artists, you know, they grow up in that world, and then once they start to see the success, it's easy to detach yourself from it. And to, like, kind of, in a sense, I'm definitely not as tightly knitting into it as I was before, especially with, like, the hometown scene, because when Degrader was coming up, before we had toured, your only option is to be, like, very tightly woven into your personal community. As we've grown, like, obviously, like, our hometown scene has kind of fizzled out, but I don't want to lose that feeling of immersion. You know, I want to feel like when I go to my own shows to play, I have that same excitement as when I was going to shows at my local Knights of Columbus, you know, at 16 and 17, you know, seeing my favorite local bands for the first time. Like, I want people to think that, oh, Degrader's coming through, we're going to get to hang, you know what I mean? Like, more than just, oh, I can't wait to see them play. Like, I can't wait to talk to them. I can't wait to see them. And that's why I've kind of, you know, as soon as we play, I go get a breath of fresh air, and then I change, and then I come right back in, and I like to watch, like, the local bands and talk to those dudes and meet the people in each community, and people definitely take notice of that. And when we come back, it's like we have, like I said, we have a family and not just a fan base.
And that's part of your networking. And you guys are killing it in that aspect too. So that's just another way that you're going up and up the ladder and making way for you guys to the next big thing. One of the things that I wanted to open up the space for you to talk about is the misconceptions about tour. Usually when people think bands are on tour, they think that, you know, it's a vacation, they're having fun, which you are, but at the same time, it could be very emotionally and mentally taxing for you. You come back and you can come back to a whole different situation, and it could be difficult. So what are some of the misconceptions that people think about tour?
I think, I mean, you just said it within the question. Definitely the biggest misconception about tour is people that don't really know what we're about or what's going on kind of just assume that I'm on some, like, paid vacation or something like that. You know what I mean? And it's really nothing like that at all. You have to treat it like a job. And that's not to say that I don't enjoy it, because if I didn't, there would be no reason for me to do it. You know, it's my favorite thing to do in the world. But there's this kind of sense where when you're on the road, you kind of pass everyone by, in a sense, and in another sense, everyone passes you by. And what I mean by that is, to start, you know, when we pass other people by, there's things that you experience on the road that are just, you know, borderline virtually impossible to experience in your everyday, normal day-to-day life. You know, you're not going to be running into homeless people trying to get into your van, or, like, crazy things like that happening, or even so much as just literally driving all the time, traveling, not being on a normal sleep schedule. And on the surface, it might seem like that's not, like, that big of a deal, but eventually when you're out for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, it starts to add up, and it really does take a toll on you. And then on the other side of things, people from your home also pass you by, in the sense that life doesn't wait for us to return. So, you know, when I'm out on tour, unfortunately, something that happened on the Stay Sick tour was my girlfriend's grandmother. she passed away, and it was just literally impossible for me to get home to make it to the services. And that was a moment in my life where, someone really needed me to be for them, and I just literally could not be there. I didn't have the money to fly home, and even if I did, that meant that my business is going to take a big hit, which obviously I'm willing to sacrifice for like someone that I love, but it's more just the sense that like sacrifice had to be made in one way or another, and there was no way for me to come out of that situation, feeling good about either choice. You know what I mean? Then you come home, weeks pass, and you come home and you have to like kind of adapt to how everyone has evolved without you. You miss birthdays, funerals, key events in people's lives, important games, important things that are important to the people that are important to you. Sometimes when people, don't quite understand this lifestyle and they think that I'm just on vacation, people can grow bitter towards you and they can be angry at you for missing those types of things. And I don't want people to feel like I'm like skipping out on them or not paying attention to their needs or trying to nourish our relationship. This is my thing, and I have to see this through. Just like everybody else has their own things that, they've sacrificed for and they need to see through. It's just because when we're on tour and you have to portray, how tour is going to your fans, you have to make it, whether it's going good or not, you have to make it look like you're having a good time. No one really wants to see or acknowledge the fact that, maybe someone isn't feeling 100% just because they're on stage and performing. Just because that I'm out living my dream doesn't mean that my emotions, get put on hold and nothing can go wrong. I'm a human being and I still feel my human emotions when I go out and I do my thing. And the longer you go out and the more frequent you go out, the greater risk you're at for that disconnect. And, luckily for me, I'm surrounded by great family and friends and an amazing girlfriend that always make it easy for me to adapt back home and make me feel like I didn't miss out on anything and everyone's good at catching me up. And, obviously we have social media and our phones that keep us in touch with people, FaceTiming on the road and phone calls and whatnot. So it's easier than it's ever been. But it's just also important to acknowledge that, like, it exists. And, like, I feel like people are so quick to be, like, harsh on musicians and artists on the internet, and they think that, like, whatever we're creating is exclusively for them, but it's also, for ourselves. We do this because it's our passion and we want to see where we can push ourselves as artists. And sometimes, putting all of your soul and emotion into art can be taxing on your mental health. And I think it's important for people to just, be mindful of that and be nice.
Be supportive. I mean, that's the good thing about, like you previously said about going on tour. And at least that you're going to get to see some friends. So, like, even if there's fans there who don't really understand how you're feeling, at least you have that support system that does at the same time.
Exactly, and that's one of the best benefits of having a fan base like we do, where, even on stage, I'm able to open up and talk about, these dark emotions and these dark places that sometimes we go to. Sometimes people get trapped in their heads and it's able to and they're able to put themselves in a depressive or anxious state. So having a fan base like that allows me to be more transparent and more real with people and give people like authenticity. Like, anybody can get up on stage and pretend to be the man and say whatever they want and be tough and get people to mosh and to go crazy. But it takes a little extra to get on stage and to put yourself out there and not be sure how people are going to react, but to open up the difficult discussions about mental health and or whatever topic it is that I decide to cover for that day. And it's good that, the conversation doesn't end after the show. I'm still talking with my friends and our fans and our family about these things long after, the set goes down. And I think that's probably the most important goal that I have with this band is I just want people to be having these difficult discussions and to keep the conversation going.
I completely agree. I'm as a communications major. I mean, that's my goal is to always get people talking, whether it's about something that they're going through or something that just needs to be talked about, like we talked about at the beginning of this interview. So I don't want to keep you too much longer. You've given me amazing conversation here, not just for this project, but to actually engage with you and hear your thoughts has been absolutely incredible. I want to, one last time, just turn the mic over to you. You have however long you need or want to say whatever you want to.
Woo! All right. Well, let me give a couple shout outs. Obviously, want to shout out, the day one homies that have been by our side from the beginning. Born Anew, Boundaries, Downswing, can't say it enough. Great American Ghost, Regime, all of New England's scene. If I don't say you don't feel like you're left out, I'm just like panicking and I'm trying to say as much as I can. Shout out to Mike Milford, Scott Lee, Davey, James, the whole team behind the band. Thank you guys for just putting us in a good position and working with us to make this the sickest it can be. To everybody that's been listening to the music, I hope you guys are excited for the record as much as I am. And I hope you guys feel that you're with us every single step of the way, because you are, and we're with you guys. I think the most important thing that I can say is mental health is important, and it's important to not ignore your own mental health as well as the mental health amongst, your friends and family. Be sure to check in on people. You never know what's going on in someone's life until you ask. And even if someone doesn't want to open up right away, leave that door open. Leave that option there, because you never know when someone's going to need to turn to you. And if you're the type of person that feels like you don't have anybody to turn to, don't be a stranger. We can be friends. Hit me up on Twitter. Hit the band up on Instagram. There's always someone that's willing to listen to you. And there's always a way to overcome the challenges in your life and to turn something negative into something positive. And, thank you for having me today. It's been really fun. And Brand New Burn Week comes out on March 22nd.
Just know that I am not Degrader, motherfucker.